Welcome to the Total Football Analysis Magazine channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like us and give us a lot of love, plus coach. There's also a 20% off our affiliate link if you subscribe to the TFA site. I'm going to introduce my two esteemed partners here. We have Coach Gabe. How's it going, Coach?
Going pretty well. Thanks for the intro. The affiliate link will be in the description of the video, so please find it there. Click on that link. Check out all the tools and resources available at totalfootballanalysis.com.
And from the United Kingdom, we have Daniel. How's it going, sir?
Hello. How are you, Emerson? Hello, Gabe. Very nice to be here.
We have a very interesting show today, and I'm excited about this because it's basically a lot of it has to do with the current results from the UEFA Champions League. And we're going to talk about the UEFA Champions League. That's going to be our last segment today because we have semifinals already in place. But the first thing we're going to discuss, and I'm going to go through a couple of the themes here, is Unai Emery, Mr. Knockout Stages Extraordinaire, which is crazy. And we have a special segment that I think we would only find, unless you're like in Germany, or you're a German expat, or you're just even more of a soccer football nerd than we are. We're going to talk about the second division of Germany, the 2.Bundesliga, Bundesliga 2, which is what it literally means, and how exciting and interesting that is going right now. So join us, and remember to subscribe, remember to like us, and as the coach said, there is a 20% off. Just subscribe to the TFA site, and you'll hear all the best analysis online in football right now. So let's start with Unai Emery. Welcome back, everybody. After the intro, as we mentioned, our first section today is going to be about Mr. Good Evening, Mr. Unai Emery, one of those players who had a playing career, who give hope to all the, let's call them less than stellar, soccer playing careers, football playing careers, a career mostly spent playing in second division teams in Spain, who, when he retired, got a job with a small club called Lorca Deportiva, who he was able to manage and, basically promote to second division, which then gave him a huge break with a team called Almeria. And Almeria, he then, promoted to its first ever campaign in La Liga, in first division. And from there, as they say, the rest is history, because he got to Valencia. Unai Emery got Valencia in the top three, basically in the Liga, for a couple of years in a row. He had a brief stint at Spartak Moscow, which he probably wants to forget, Spartak Moscow. But then came, after 6 months at Spartak Moscow, he landed his job at Sevilla. And that was legendary. I mean, he got Sevilla to win 3 back-to-back UEFA Europa League championships. That landed him after that as a legend in the club, a huge contract at Paris Saint-Germain. He was supposed to go there to make them win the Champions League. Didn't happen. We might all remember that game they lost 6-1 when they had beat Barcelona 4-0 in Paris. If you remember that game, that pretty much ended his career at Paris Saint-Germain. Then came his very interesting stint at Arsenal that we can discuss, because once he left, it's not like things got better, So there was like an institutional thing happening at Arsenal that I think just now they're maybe starting to come back from. And from Arsenal, he basically landed at Villarreal, where, lo and behold, once again, Mr. Europa League won the title last year against Man U. And this year at the Champions League, which the team entered because they won the Europa League, he basically eliminated Man United and Bayern Munich back-to-back in knockout stages. And, it's not a fluke when you do it over and over and over again. So we're going to dedicate some time to talk about Unai Emery and what magic wand he has for these tournaments, and especially at these stages. He hasn't had enormous success in leagues. He won the French league once with Paris Saint-Germain, but obviously that year, knockouts again, he won the treble in France. He won the league, he won the Coupe de France, and he won the Coupe de Champion. And yet he hasn't really had enormous success with winning leagues, but he has had enormous recurring success on knockout tournaments, especially in the Europa League. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about this interesting career that this man has had. And we have some stats that we can talk about. And Daniel, why don't we start with you? You were looking at some of these details, and maybe you can, this is a comparison between La Liga stats and the Champions League stats from this year. And there's some interesting distinctions here that we can start mentioning.
Thank you, Emerson. So I'm always quite cynical when I take a look at statistics, but they obviously do tell a story, and we need to untangle that story. So I'm just wondering, how is it that Emery, time and time again, is able to do this? And I think this time around, eliminating a team like Bayern Munich is extraordinary. These statistics, though, I mean, help me out here, Coach. I'm just going to point out a couple. If you take a look at passes, so 542 in 542 in the league, and 450 in the Champions League. So they've actually passed the ball more in La Liga than they have in the Champions League. And they also have more ball possession in the league than they do in the Champions League. So does that mean that they're just ruthless at this stage, that they're not faffing about? I mean, you figure you have the ball more than the other team, you're going to create more, right? You're keeping them from developing patterns of play, etc. So I was surprised when I saw those figures.
Yeah, I have to say I was surprised as well, because first of all, for the differences that you noted, but also some of these statistics that are quite similar that I didn't expect them to be quite similar. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you have much fewer passes. So these stats are per match, average per match in each of La Liga and Champions League. And I mean, Champions League, they're scoring more goals, but there's creating more chances in La Liga. So, I mean, barely, right? More chances, seven per game versus 6 per game in the Champions League. But the conversion rate, I think this is where the difference is. This is why you have more goals, is that the conversion rate is higher. So you have, and then I want to look at if you look down the XG, looking at the expected goals, it's 1.88 in La Liga and 1.85 in the Champions League. So the conversion rate is higher, but you're creating kind of like a little bit fewer chances. So that kind of balances out in terms of expected goals. It is interesting that the passes are significantly down per match, 542 in La Liga versus 450 in the Champions League. My guess is that would be probably due to where the location on the field where these passes are taking place. They could be deeper, so they're making more passes. It could also have to do with the fact that there are more teams that Villarreal are able to dominate in La Liga than there are in Champions League that have fewer games that they can dominate in Champions League. So that could be a function of that as well. I just figured that they would be a lot more reserved in the Champions League with a lot more counterattacks. But we look at the counterattacks, actually 11 per game in La Liga versus 12 in the Champions League. So it's almost the same. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out here is and you had mentioned this, Daniel, backstage, is in the efficiency for attacks on the right flank. And from 10% La Liga down to 5% in the Champions League, whereas in the other two, efficiency through the left flank and through the center zone, it's up slightly from La Liga performances. So I don't know if that's a question of stronger left backs potentially in the Champions League overall, or is that a question of funneling the ball maybe to when we look at how Emery plays, he's played in a variety of formations. He can go in a 4-2-3-1. He's done 4-3-3. He's mostly played 4-4-2 in La Liga and in the Champions League. So I think that could be a function of the two guys up front maybe shifting a little bit to that left-hand side. So to open up the right flank. And so there might be like less support on the right flank. But, looking at these stats, and I guess with your cynicism as well, Daniel, is they don't really tell us much in terms of difference in style of play, right? Other than the fewer passes and less possession that you mentioned, whereas all the other stats look similar.
They're pretty well matched.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to mention on the left-hand side in the Champions League, I noticed, because of the two games that are freshest in my mind, is how Estupiñán played on that left-hand side, the Ecuadorian left back. I thought he, time and time again, was bombing up the left-hand side, and I think with possibly more effective finishing, that would have borne more fruit.
There is a question here, which is a question for both of you, of if we had to define the style, what Emery is doing is basically adapting very smartly to their opponents more than just imposing a style that plays one way all the time, like Cholo, Guardiola style or whatever, right? Like in this case, he's adapting very well to the opponents. And I think that's maybe something that we can talk a little bit more about, you know?
You can bring that up, but what I found is, I'm just looking for it here. There's a tactics.
4-4-2 is super easy, super compact. It's not a very dynamic setup. It's probably the easiest one to implement, I think. Doesn't always work. And to be honest, casi no le sirve tampoco.
So, yeah, no, it doesn't always work, but I don't think he's changing that system very much. I think that's been kind of his go-to this season and in general, especially when he's protecting. So we can get into that. You can ask that question, Emerson. It's like, is he adapting to he took out Juve last season? He took out United. This season he took out Juve. He had United in the group stage. Now he took out Bayern. Is he adapting to the teams? And I'll say, actually, this is what he's implementing. And then we can go into the next slide, and I can do the tactics, and then we can do final thoughts.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
So we have about 4 minutes.
Well, we're editing this, right, Coach? So
yeah. This will all be cut out, and I think we
from 8 we finished at 9, so we have 6. We have probably in between 5 and 6 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go super fast
to keep it to the 15 minutes.
That's fair. That's fair. So one correction that we have is that Villarreal actually played Man United in the group stage. They played Juventus in their first knockout, and then, as we know, they eliminated Bayern. How much of these are 3 teams that actually played very differently? All these 3 teams, right? Juventus, Bayern, Man United, different styles of players. Juventus and Bayern a little bit above, obviously, where Man United is right now. So, can we talk about a coach that knows how to adapt to its opponent more than always having a very imposing style? Maybe the way he organizes the team is similar. The players that he has. Let's talk a little bit more about how he gets to that stage in the knockout stages.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to so I thought that the game against Bayern Munich in both ties really showed what he's done a lot this season, and he showed up in a 4-4-2, and he doesn't always do that. Sometimes he's in a 4-2-3-1 if he needs an extra person in midfield or he needs to drop his wingers back a little bit. Daniel was mentioning some good comments about the 4-4-2 and why it can possibly be so effective in cup situations.
Yeah, it's a very solid, basic structure that's usually the easiest to implement. You've got your 2 lines of 4 with your 2 forwards up front that can either pressure, or one of them can drop very easily out wide or in the center to create a 5-man midfield. You still have those spaces in between lines, but generally speaking, it's a very solid block. And he has them drilled remarkably well.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll piggyback off of that a little bit here, and so he set them up in a 4-4-2 against Bayern in both legs, and he presses really quite narrowly with the front 2, but the front 2 aren't expected to win the ball. They're expected, if you see in the graphics here, there's quite a lot of space between the front 2, the forward line and the midfield line. That's the space that Daniel was just talking about as well. And just to illustrate this, we saw this kind of this example in this tie in both legs over and over again. So I pulled one, and we'll take a look at kind of like how exactly they pressure, but also what's important to note and why I think Emery is so good in cup ties is because he employs a simple system, like Daniel says, but everybody is so synchronized, and that's one of his kind of his characteristics. And I thought it was one that didn't work out in Arsenal, like you mentioned, Emerson, and that was very much for cultural reasons from the club, country as well. And Emery likes to go in to get people synchronized like that. He needs to control, right?
Yeah.
And he did not have a club or players that he could control at Arsenal, and that's why it was such a cultural clash. But tactically speaking, we'll go here to the first slide on the left. We see the front two just taking away the space so nobody from the back line can play that ball into Kimmich in the central, trying to play between the lines, between the front two and then the midfield four. You'll see how the midfield four and the back four, when we see in future slides here, they remain quite compact. And those are the two lines that are connected and playing synchronously, and they play off of the front two. So wherever the front two go, they shift to plug the gaps. We'll go to the next image. So the image on the top on the right hand side. So the ball gets played wide, right? And we see, well, the front two kind of angle themselves, and then one person's coming in to pressure the ball, right? We have the right mid coming to pressure the ball. That's to make sure that the ball doesn't get played over the top. You see Lewandowski making the run in the middle there. If that ball gets played early, they could be in trouble. But since the pass is coming from the left center back, Alphonso Davies he doesn't have an angle to hit that ball first time, and that's kind of what saves Villarreal. But this is where they can be weak. This is where Villarreal can be exploited. Once Alphonso Davies, he gets the ball and he plays the ball back to his center back, and we see in the next slide, the lower right slide there, how compact the back line is. The back four there, quite compact and close to that midfield line again. This Kimmich trying to work the space in between the midfield line and the forward line as the front two kind of close it down. So these are just kind of some of the things we were talking about. This is all the same play. The ball gets played into Gnabry, and we see how that midfield line steps to pressure. And there's one little sliver where if I think that was Pavard. Was it Pavard playing the left center back? I don't remember, to be honest. But he has with his arm up, yeah, exactly, with his arm up on the bottom slide. So but on the top left slide, he has like a sliver. He could play that through ball, but then that player has nowhere to go either, and that's quite a dangerous ball, and you don't want to lose the ball there. So it's understandable why Pavard takes the extra touch and looks to recycle the ball centrally. Now there's only one place, and in the bottom side that the ball can go. We see again the two lines, the back line and the midfield line, quite compact, taking up all the space in midfield. Emery likes to make his pressure just cover the spaces and force you to play the ball wide. And then once you play the ball wide, and Emerson, you'll appreciate this analogy, is they almost play like a trap, using the sideline to trap players into the side. They want to prevent everything from coming through the middle, which is interesting because the 4-4-2, you have fewer bodies in midfield. So the way you prevent the ball coming into midfield is through your tactics. And I think this is where they went wrong a little bit at Arsenal. And then just to kind of complete the play here, this is all, again, the same play. They shift over to the left. Look how synchronized Emery's lines are. They all shift to the left-hand side, all of them together. The spacing between the players horizontally always remains roughly the same. Yeah. Vertically, they do accordion a little bit, right?
That's a coach of mine used a wonderful analogy. Just taking a look at the slides, you see the yellow lines connecting the midfielders. Just pretend that was a rope, and each one of them is holding onto the rope. And as they move back and forth, they all shift. And as one moves back a little bit, they close some of that space. And the same thing happens when another one moves forward, because again, they're holding onto the rope, essentially, and that's how well drilled they are, and there's no way of going through the middle.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I love? The slide on the right-hand side there where we're showing Gnabry going inside. He's moved inside to kind of overload the right back. But look what happens. The center mid, I don't remember who that is right now. I can't see him, can't make him out from here. He drops back he sees that movement, so he drops back to help the defense, and the right mid pinches inside to help that movement of the center mid.
Yeah.
So the lines are connected horizontally and the lines are connected vertically. And look at the distance between the front two and the midfield line that we were talking about at the beginning of the segment.
No, and we can finish by saying that obviously you need the players to execute this against teams like Bayern Munich and teams like Juventus. And it's not like Villarreal has, the top players in the world, but they've signed very smartly. Like they brought Danjuma from Bournemouth, and like he's actually like killing it right now with Villarreal. He resuscitated Gerard Moreno. Raúl Albiol is starting. This guy is like 150 years old. And he's the captain. He's starting, and this is a guy that won the World Championship with Spain in 2010. He's been very smart, and they actually have a youngish, let's put it that way, very good keeper as well, who has saved them in many occasions, which is a Rulli, who's Argentinian. And, these are smart players to get for a coach that is very much, as you're saying, a guy that knows how to work these pieces. And for some reason, this works for him a lot in knockout tournaments. In the league, and I remember this even from when he was coaching Sevilla, it takes a while. Sevilla, if they had started strong, they probably would have won those leagues. But it took him a while to get cooking, right? But then you get to these knockout stages, and he was already on a roll. So it's almost like you just have to survive the first 4 months of the season, and then you're going to be doing fine. It's interesting to see all that. So, on that perspective, that's a little insight into Unai Emery, into some of the tactics that got him there. And next, we're going to talk about the beautiful second division of Germany, the Bundesliga 2, or the 2.Bundesliga. Welcome back, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and like us and give us all the love that we need in this show. Remember, there's a 20% off our affiliate link if you subscribe to the TFA site. And let's get going with Bundesliga 2 or 2.Bundesliga. My German is not really polished, so I don't know which order it goes. If it's 2.Bundesliga or Bundesliga 2.
2.Bundesliga.
Yeah. But it's a very interesting season that we can discuss because there's actually a good number of teams that normally are in first division here. Obviously historic teams like Schalke, like Werder Bremen, teams like Hamburg. If you see the standing here, Hannover 96, like these are teams that have spent many, many years in Bundesliga number 1, Eins, if I'm not mistaken. And let's talk about what's happening here. Coach Gabe and I have a soft spot for St. Pauli, for example. So we can go into that a little bit. But guys, what is happening with Bundesliga 2? Tell us.
Well, it's an incredibly exciting end to the season with some massive clubs vying for promotion. I think what's making it even more exciting is the fact that Schalke, seemingly out of nowhere, has won 5 in a row, and they're looking very, very comfortable. So the top 2 qualify automatically, and the third team is involved in a playoff with a team from the top tier, from the Bundesliga. And I'm really happy to see Schalke up there because they do not belong in the second tier. They are one of the biggest clubs in the world. Prior to the pandemic, they were a top 20 club globally in terms of revenue. Their fan base is massive, not only in Gelsenkirchen, but in the whole region. They're a really, really big club with a storied history. And I think it's brilliant that they're back up there. And if you look at the little colored circles, take a look at the recent form in comparison to the next 3 that are vying for promotion: Bremen, St. Pauli, and Darmstadt. I think they're looking spot on for promotion.
Yeah, Schalke showing the best form in 2.Bundesliga right now. And what's interesting about this is a lot of this form has come not a lot of it, maybe half of it. They were showing good form before this, but it all has come within the controversy of the Russian invasion into Ukraine and Schalke losing their sponsor of Gazprom.
Gazprom, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, we know Putin has close ties to Germany when he was a KGB agent there in the late 80s and 90s. And he's had ties to Schalke apparently. Some of the owners had like personal ties to him, and they lost their sponsor, and then they just started winning. At the same time, Werder Bremen and St. Pauli, they've been drawing a lot of games, even drawing to lower tier sides. I think St. Pauli recently drew to Sandhausen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah, in the last 2 minutes, I think it was.
Yep.
Yeah, they conceded.
I have to say that if I have a Bundesliga team, it's actually Werder Bremen, because they were the first team that brought on Claudio Pizarro,
right?
Who is the top scoring foreigner in German soccer history, I think, football history. So, or must be at the top 2 or top 3 right now. So I actually went to a couple of Werder Bremen games back in the early 2000s. So I have a soft spot. So I really want to see them back up in the first league. But go ahead.
Definitely not the top foreigner, because there's a Polish guy running around the leagues.
But is he historically at where Claudio Pizarro got to, or not yet?
He's historically, I think, passing Gerd Muller, right?
Is he?
Yeah.
I mean, you might be right.
Yeah, he's all the way up there.
He's by.
Yeah, it's. I think it's important for these. I mean, it makes for a wonderful second tier. It really does. I mean, in general, the German leagues are very well supported, which is one of the things that really hurt them during the pandemic, because they have fantastic gate receipts. They have a wonderful away culture as well. So it's really nice just now, because I think it's been only in the last few weeks that they've allowed full attendances in stadiums across Germany. So I think it's really important for some of these clubs to be up in the first division again. I don't know what that would mean to challenging FC Bayern's dominance, but I think when you have clubs that are so well supported in the top tier, it just makes things that much more competitive. And there's some fantastic players on these teams. I really want to see Terodde from Schalke in the top tier. He's the historic marksman for the second tier, and it's about time that I think he gets a chance to score. He's in his early 30s, so he's had quite a career in the second tier. But I think it's time for him to give it a shot in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would say, so just for just to read this out, Schalke's on 56 points, Werder Bremen's on 54, St. Pauli's on 53, Darmstadt in 4th on 51, but you even have Nuremberg, that hanging on a little bit with 50 points. Hamburg's probably out of it at this point with 48, but it's such a tight race. I think this could be the most exciting finish in Europe is in 2.Bundesliga. I'm excited to see a team like St. Pauli with a kind of cult following that they have, and a different kind of culture that's coming up through the ranks, and their big star, obviously, Guido Burgstaller, who has 18 goals this season. Have these kind of smaller players, the boys in brown, get a shot. What's even more fascinating, though, and I'll let Emerson take this, is the matches that these teams have remaining. So we'll focus on the top 4, Schalke, Bremen, and St. Pauli and Darmstadt. And these are the matches they have remaining.
So we have Schalke, Werder Bremen. I mean, basically, top 2.
Saturday. This Saturday.
Yeah. This Saturday, exactly. Next Saturday, you have Saturday after that, 6 days later, you have Sandhausen against Schalke 04. You see how I can say that? Schalke 04, then St. Pauli the week after that, again, 1st against 3rd. And then you have Nuremberg against Schalke 04, I guess you would say it in English. So basically, the promotion could be decided in the next 2 weeks, basically, in the Bundesliga too.
And in the next 4 weeks, Schalke plays 2nd, 3rd, and 5th.
Yep.
And a team that just drew to St. Pauli that's battling relegation, which might not be easy.
But on current form, Bremen, St. Pauli, and Nuremberg aren't doing well.
Right.
So if there was a time to play him, it's now. It's now. Yeah.
And if there's a time to avoid Schalke, it's now.
It's now. Yeah.
And I do wanna mention that it's something that Daniel mentioned a little bit ago, which is the structure of German clubs is amazing. They are community owned, most of them. Yeah. They have some of the lowest ticket prices, even though Germany is, the biggest economy in Europe, and they're one of the real economic powerhouses in the world. Huge exporter, huge economic prowess. And yet their ticket prices are some of the lowest, if not the lowest, in all the major leagues in Europe. Way lower than England, obviously, lower than the Spanish Liga, lower than Italy. It's crazy that during, a time of expansion in so many ways in worldwide football, the German league has stayed super competitive. There's obviously one asterisk, which is Bayern Munich, right, who has a humongous budget and they're a magnet. And you have Borussia Dortmund, but obviously Red Bull also bought a team, as they do, that became successful as well. But in general, even Bayern Munich, even Borussia Dortmund, they're still community owned. They still have stakeholders that are on the on the bleachers, that are basically on the stadium. They don't have the owner, right? They don't have the guy that's coming from some other part of the world, to say I'm the person that dictates. And it's part of the culture of football there that they're trying to defend in the middle of all this voracious, appetite for content now, for football content. So you want to see some of these clubs succeed. The Gazprom thing was an issue, obviously, with Schalke, yeah. But at the same time, that team represents a mining town, right? It's a very worker class team. So, it's very interesting to see that and to see Bundesliga to thriving like this with these great clubs speaks wonders of where German soccer, the leagues at least go right now. They're one of the least in-debt leagues as well compared to other, to other leagues. And there they are. They're competing. They're, look at the Europa League, look at what the semifinals, are saying there. Bayern Munich still, punching, well above, where they should be where they should be actually in Champions League, and there was a shocking elimination against Villarreal. So Bundesliga's fine. I always said that if there's one league I should watch more of, it's the Bundesliga. And I think that's something that we can say for a lot of fans. So I think this is a good reflection for it. And again, Schalke 04, I remember also those games where they had Raúl, and they had another compatriot of mine, Jefferson Farfan, used to play there as well, and so there's a lot of history with Peruvian players that go to the Bundesliga. Pizarro opened that door, obviously. Paulo Guerrero spent some time there too with Bayern Munich. And Hamburg, exactly. Yeah. So it's a very interesting league to watch. Reminds me of where the Dutch league was in the 90s, maybe, with a lot of young talent. So I don't know, it's something to see also. Given, and this is where I'll segue back to you guys, given, how coaching goes in waves. There was a time for Spanish coaches, a time for Italian coaches. We're now in the German coach era, right? And, you got Tuchel, you got obviously Klopp, Nagelsmann, who's not doing super well right now. So there's a moment now for German coaches taking the helms of some big clubs. Obviously you have the Rangnick at Man United. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what this means also, where we are coaching-wise, football-wise, and what you see in the Bundesliga and what this kind of drops into the Bundesliga too as well.
There's definitely a boon of German managers that are, that the one thing I think a commonality of those systems is intensity, right? And kind of that the counter press and all of that, and then it's kind of so the rise of the counter press has come with the rise of the German coach. But just to get back quickly here, because we are running short on time for this segment. Here's Werder Bremen's schedule. So obviously they have Schalke coming up this weekend on Saturday. Definitely watch that. Then they have Holstein Kiel, Then they have one that I'll let you pronounce, Emerson.
On the German speaker now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So
you can say it's an easier schedule, right?
It's an easier schedule.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'd say Jan Regensburg and Holstein Kiel might be challenging. They were both doing much better at the beginning of the season, but this definitely looks like an easier schedule. However, it might be irrelevant after that first match almost.
Well, I mean, if Schalke wins that first match, then they go 5 points up with 3 matches remaining. Yeah. But Schalke has 2 of those matches will be quite difficult for them, whereas Bremen have all 3. Like if they get 9 points from the 3, Schalke would still have to lose 2 to lose that top spot. So it's a big ask. Yeah. So things get quite complicated. But I think it's still there for Bremen, even if they lose that match. If we look over at who's next, St. Pauli here. St. Pauli's schedule is obviously
yeah,
it's tough, right?
Yeah, tougher, I would say. Yeah. Yes, but it is tough. I mean, they're all playing Schalke, so that's interesting. Meaning, both other teams, and I think
hold on a second, Emerson. We're gonna have to go back. I'm gonna read the matchups here because your mic is cutting out again. If you want to take a look at that, and I'll go. So St. Pauli has Darmstadt, obviously, who's in 4th place. That's this Saturday. Then they have Nuremberg, who's in 5th place next weekend. Then they have Schalke, obviously, who's in 1st place, and then they have Fortuna Düsseldorf later on, which will be the easier of the 4 games. But the next 3 weeks for St. Pauli, after not being in great form, I have to say, as a little fan. 1 win in 5, and then 5, yeah. How many? What do you see here in the next 3? How many points do you see in the next 3 for them?
I would say 3, max 4 points.
3 to 4.
Yeah, I think they maybe will have a win against Nuremberg, but it'll be tough against Darmstadt and Schalke. Yeah.
Which would keep them behind, obviously, Schalke and behind Werder Bremen, predicting behind, given their schedules. And so let's see if and that's just like, so St. Pauli will be hanging on to that playoff spot for dear life. Now that match this weekend against Darmstadt, that's a survival match right there. I mean, if they beat Darmstadt, then that puts them. That puts them 5 points ahead of Darmstadt, so it gives them some cushion, and they should be okay for the playoff. But when we look over at Darmstadt's schedule,
it's much other than that first match against St. Pauli. It's a softer run-in toward the end of the season, definitely. Yeah.
Right. So they visit St. Then this weekend. Then they have then they visit Fortuna Düsseldorf before hosting Paderborn on the final match day. You could see 7 to 9 points in the last 3, right?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, and it's just this next fixture is the one that I think is going to decide it.
Yeah.
For Schalke, for Bremen, and for St. Pauli and Darmstadt. I mean, it's huge. It's a huge weekend.
It's a huge weekend for St. Pauli because they were not anywhere near the Bundesliga in the last recent years.
Yeah.
So even if they get to a playoff possibility, I think it's going to be huge for them.
And the playoff is no given either. It could be Hertha Berlin, who's another team that's underperforming. Yeah. They should a huge team with a big following. They should be doing much better. It could be Stuttgart. Stuttgart has underperformed this season, but we know they did really well last season. So which Stuttgart's going to show up on a playoff? It's always hard to tell. So the ending to this league is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, let's watch more Bundesliga. And, remember to subscribe. Remember to like us. Remember to give us a follow. And, remember, there's a 20% off our affiliate link if you subscribe to the TFA site. So next up, we're going to talk about the Champions League and the semifinals, which are now set, and very interesting matchups. Welcome back, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and like us and give us love. We need the love, So there's a 20% off our affiliate link if you subscribe to the TFA site. And ready to talk Champions League, ready to talk, it's that time of the year. And there's 4 teams left. Only one of them, I would say, is a surprise, which is Villarreal. My argument to start the section would be that the other 3 teams are probably the 3 best teams in the world right now. The only one that I would have probably thrown in there instead of Villarreal is the team Villarreal eliminated, which is Bayern Munich. But outside of that, this is the cream of la creme, right? This is the profiterole of the profiteroles. And fascinating matchups on one end, which is Real Madrid, Man City. And on the other hand, dangerous one for Liverpool, I think, because they're going to be overwhelming favorites. And Villarreal, from what we've seen and the Emery section that we just had, they kind of like that. They like to be the underdogs. They like to play that. They don't care what people think about them. So, and they have a very tough stadium, too, for teams like Liverpool, which happen to Bayern Munich, because it's a very small field. It's a small stadium, So it's borderline a Champions League stadium, although it's bigger now. Trust me, I went there. So let's talk about the game that everybody's going to be obviously very much excited about, which seems fairly even, which is Real Madrid, Man City. And I mean, just a superficial view of what to expect. I mean, let's start with you, Daniel. What do we expect from that game, from that matchup, from both games? I mean,
I think if we see the Madrid of the Clásico, the Madrid of the first leg against PSG, the Madrid of the second leg against Chelsea up until approximately 80-some minutes, I think Man City's going to have a field day. But with Real Madrid, you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't. And I don't think it's about tactics. I mean, Man City has a phenomenal starting 11. Not so great a bench, as I think we've seen over the last few weeks, but a phenomenal starting 11. And I think Pep is a brilliant footballing mastermind. Tactics, I think, aren't really all that relevant at times. And I think if El Madrid, if they're starting 11 with potentially their 12th man, Rodrigo, if they have a good game, it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to be an incredibly difficult match. If Militao has his head screwed on right, if there aren't any significant injuries, so if Mendy starts, if Casemiro keeps his head on straight as well and doesn't get an early booking, and if Vinicius takes his chances and takes his chances, half chances, and actually stays on his feet, and if Benzema plays how he's played the whole season, I think it'll be very evenly matched. But if Madrid doesn't have their head screwed on, I think even a Man City at half gas will come out on top across both legs. But if Madrid plays the way they can, then I think I'm leaning toward Madrid.
Do you agree, Coach?
No, not at all. I don't see any way Manchester City lose this tie. I think if Madrid come out at their best, then Manchester City will have a match on their hands, a tie on their hands, and they'll have to work for it. And tactics may come more into maybe more prominent in that situation, as Pep maybe looks to isolate a poorer performing defender or something like that. If Ferland Mendy's, maybe not fully healthy, maybe you attack him, maybe you attack Carvajal on the other side. Who knows if Nacho will be playing, then certainly you attack Nacho. So I really think that Manchester City has the upper hand here. And I think Madrid at their best can play with Manchester City, but aren't quite there, certainly not tactically. And I think Madrid is only at their best, half the time.
Yeah.
So
but that best comes at these moments. Like, this is the Madrid that everybody fears. And I think they have an enormous advantage, which is that they have the home game as the last game, right? So they play the Bernabeu, and Bernabeu makes players in opposing teams that haven't played there before, like basically, scared. Like they enter the game very nervous. It's an imposing stadium, an imposing history that comes from playing there. So, I mean, my question to both of you now is Benzema playing both games? And if the answer is yes, I think Madrid's going to go through. I mean, he's far and away the best player of the matchup, I think.
I think he should. I think he should be fit. The question is, does he play in the league? Maybe. Now that they have a 12-point, at least a 12-point gap between themselves and Barcelona, and 15 between themselves, Sevilla and Atletico. That would be the question. Does he play in the league? I see what you're saying. I mean, there's that expression, así gana el Madrid.
Yes.
Where
for many reasons, which I won't
many reasons. But it is.
That's a topic for a different pod.
A different show altogether. Yes.
They have a winning mentality. Pep must have learned a tremendous amount from what I felt was a very poor showing in the Champions League final last season, where he overthought his tactics and it just wasn't really City on the pitch. It wasn't a mess, but it wasn't the commanding performance that you would have expected against the Chelsea, which in no way, shape, or form was the best team in Europe across the Champions League season. So I can see what you're saying, Gabe, that Man City definitely has the edge, absolutely. But I don't know. To bet against El Madrid is usually not a good idea.
It's interesting because in both of these ties, right, you have the better team from the Premier League against the team that from the La Liga that somehow finds a way to win. Who knows how, or some kind of magic or voodoo ritual or something that gets these teams. And it's that, like you're saying, Daniel, that to bet against that unquantifiable element is a risky proposition. So,
but do you really think it's so clear cut that Man City is just better than Real Madrid?
I think so.
I think they don't have position for position better players. I just think they're much better tactically. And they're a lot more disciplined. So
the difference might be the coaching then, because if you ask me personally, if you go player by player, and we don't have to go through 22 players right now, who has a better keeper? Madrid by a lot. Who has better wingers? I would argue Madrid has in Vinicius the best one of all, and they have by far the best striker. I mean, Man City doesn't even have a striker technically, right? Casemiro versus Rodri, Casemiro wins that battle, So I wouldn't, now Ancelotti versus Pep, that's where you could maybe get a little bit more. I get it. But remember, and I'm saying this as somebody that is not a fan, Madrid won multiple Champions Leagues in the last 5 years, not with their best showings in their league and with literally not their best teams that they've ever had, and so there's that competitive spirit. There's that, Madrid spirit that is just history. It's just the shirt. It's just the flag that they have that gets there. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. You can't really bet against that. And now they actually have a good team, So I don't know. That's my view at least.
The one thing I'll say about the other matchup here, Liverpool-Villarreal, is we were talking about Villarreal and Emery's tactics beforehand, right? But one thing that Liverpool does that actually Bayern Munich, they weren't doing against them, is the early long balls into the corners. So if Villarreal is trying to create traps a little bit higher up the pitch, Liverpool will bypass those with long balls from Van Dijk and from Joel Matip and hit their playmakers in Salah and Mane and Luis Diaz if he's playing and Diogo Jota. And I think Emery could get beat with those pinpoint diagonal balls.
But won't Emery, given how tight he keeps things, won't he react?
So if he reacts and say he holds his wingers back to maybe double on Salah or Mane if they get the ball, so they're not 1v1 against the fullbacks. If he reacts like that, then the problem is then you have Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson that steps into those spaces where the midfielders should be. So if he reacts, like what he tries to do is trap and outnumber the opposition on the flanks. But the thing is, it's not just Salah, it's Trent Alexander-Arnold behind him. And it's not just Mane on the left side, it's Robertson behind him.
But if Parejo can do the magic that he did for Chikwuese's goal, where he somehow evaded that press on the right and send that ball through, I would have said that I mean, I thought FC Bayern was going to thrash Villarreal at home. I thought it was going to be one of those classic 5-6-0s.
Villarreal has two very interesting players in defense. One of them is a starting player for the Argentinian national team, which is Juan Foyt, who is an incredible defender, by the way. And they have Estupiñán.
Yeah.
And these are two big, fast players that Bayern Munich was not able to beat in 2 games. I personally also believe that Liverpool is basically going to win this tie. You know, both games. I think they're probably going to win both matches. But if there's an element where I understand where I could be wrong is in that people keep underappreciating some of these overachieving players that Emery has firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah.
He has 2 incredible strikers. He has Moreno and Danjuma, who are killing it right now. He has a very solid defense, you know, with Albiol, Pau Torres was a starter for the Spanish national team. He has Foyt and he has Estupiñán, you know. He has in the midfield Parejo, you know, who is typical Spanish, talented, skilled, knows where the spaces are, controls tempo. These are the teams that if you play them right, actually hurt Liverpool. Because Liverpool is all about tempo, intensity, going up, defending with 10, attacking with 10. Villarreal can control that a little bit better, and they did that against Bayern Munich, you know. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy for them, for Liverpool, but I think that they should come away with it. But it's going to be an interesting matchup if you go player by player or position by position, let's say, you know. So
the Dani Parejo-Fabinho matchup will be very interesting. Can Parejo hold up the ball and play around him? Yeah.
And Capoue was phenomenal.
Yes.
Absolutely phenomenal against Bayern. I mean, you looked at him, you're like, who's this? Where did this guy come from? Yeah. I mean, how much did this signing cost? And he's another of those players that didn't succeed elsewhere, and all of a sudden Emery has turned him into, at least in the last few matches, into a world beater.
And don't forget, again, one of those stealth signings, you got Lo Celso with a lot of experience, you know, a ton of experience, who loves these games, you know, who played a great game against Bayern Munich. And then, you know, you got Coquelin with experience in the Premier League as well, you know. And then you have, for example, subs that I don't know who's going to start. It's still early, you know, but you can bring Chukwueze, you have Alberto Moreno. Yeah. Like, these are people that have experience. So I think club being club, Liverpool being Liverpool, they have, I think, an easier path than the other tie, but it's not going to be a cakewalk for them. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So now, predictions, are we set then? Because why don't we start with Gabriel? Let's see. Who do you predict on both legs?
So first leg, I Manchester City 3-1 over Madrid in Manchester.
Ooh. Okay.
Liverpool, I'm going to go 2-0 against Villarreal at home. I think both teams win by 2 at home. I think on the return leg, I think Villarreal and Liverpool probably, I mean, it depends, right? You have to see what happens in the first leg. It's hard to predict the second leg without knowing the first.
Yeah, of course.
But just out of the blue, I would say 1-1, the return leg, Villarreal, Liverpool. And Madrid, Manchester City, in Madrid, 2-2.
Okay, interesting. What about you, Daniel?
Well, I'm going to go 2-2 in Manchester, 3-1 in Madrid, for Madrid.
The opposite. Nice.
Yeah. And I don't know, this Liverpool tie. I'm going to say at home, I'm going to say 2-0, and then 1-0 for Villarreal in Spain. Yeah.
So I'm going to say actually that it's going to be 1-1 in Manchester, 1-1 in Madrid. Madrid's going to go through in a penalty in extra time. You know that's going to be the case. We know that's going to happen, right? It's going to be a doubtful PK that only the ref kind of saw. The bar's going to call it, and that's how they're going to go through. And people will keep hating Madrid because that's what they do. And that's on the first leg. On the second, on that first tie, and on Liverpool Villarreal, I kind of agree. I think Liverpool's going to win easy in Liverpool. I think it's going to be 2-0, maybe even 3-0 or 3-1. And they'll probably, lose by 1 goal or tie on the second game. I'll go with a 1-0 Villarreal as well, with them scrambling in the last minutes and just not being able to get there. That's what I see. And yeah, I think it's going to be Real Madrid Liverpool, and I think that's going to be an interesting, fascinating final where finally Liverpool can beat them in a final. So.
Madrid will also win that in penalties, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and like us and give us love. Plus, remember there's a 20% off our affiliate link if you subscribe to the TFA site. That was our show for today. You'll hear us again in 2 weeks with more interesting analysis, tactics, and cultural tidbits that only we can bring to you because that's how special we are. And special thanks to Gabe and Daniel again. And let's talk details and socials and where they can reach us.
Okay, I am at FPL Lens on Twitter. Please find me there. Shoot me a DM. Happy to talk tactics or anything football related. And I do want to stress all of the tools that we've used and the graphics and the stats have come from totalfootballanalysis.com. Definitely go to their site, hit the link, the affiliate link at the bottom, and get a discount on that. You won't regret it. I get, they send newsletters every day. They have inside tactics that you won't see on other sites. So really good. They're older than The Athletic, just a great site. So definitely click that link and get subscribed, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Nice to see you both, gentlemen.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Emerson. Take care.